My mom was a well-known environmentalist, my dad was a successful businessman, and our family was a model for interviews. But it was only a pretense. When I was 12, my mother died. A year later, my father married a woman who erased her memory from every wall of our home. I could only remain silent until I opened my mother's old chest. And I found a letter. A code. A safe. And in it, the truth that changed everything. This is not a story about a girl who lost her mother. This is a story about how she grew up and went back for everything that belonged to her, and for what was stolen. I was 12 when the power went out in our house. My mother, Dr. Martha Gray, was the sun around which my world revolved. She smelled like mint, wore warm flannel shirts, and spoke sharply but always with love. Even on the worst days, when a mysterious disease sucked the life out of her, she smiled as if she were made of steel and honey. When she died, the house was left with more than just a sadness, an emptiness so total that it changed the air around. Dad cried once. At the funeral. Never again. A year later, he married Victoria. I remember the first time I saw her. She got out of a black car in a white dress that looked more expensive than our entire kitchen. She hugged my dad as if he already belonged to her. Her heels thundered down the driveway like gunshots. Everything about her was controlled, polished, on display. And I, in my dirty sneakers and big hoodie, felt like a stranger in my own life. In a few weeks, she redecorated the entire house. Family photos disappeared. My mother's books were put in boxes and replaced with minimalist paintings. The smell of tea and rosemary disappeared. Now everything smelled like vanilla and antiseptic. Even my room was not spared. Victoria called it renovation. I called it erasure. Dad hardly said anything. He disappeared more and more often on conference calls, business trips, and long dinners. When I asked him why they destroyed my mother's garden, he just sighed. Everything changes, Leah. I nodded. But something inside me was in a hard knot. At first, I tried to adapt. I said please and thank you. I offered to help. I was silent when Victoria, accidentally, threw away my sketchbooks or the medals my mother and I won for eco-projects. But the real breakdown happened because of the performance in Seattle. I had been preparing for months. The youth center was organizing an environmental event. Poetry, music, activism. I wrote a speech dedicated to my mom. It was the first thing that made me feel alive again. I printed out flyers. I rehearsed every day. On the morning of the performance, Victoria canceled it. There's a gala at the Olympus tonight, she said, pouring almond milk into her coffee. Your father and I need you. It's important for the family image. I have a performance, I whispered. She didn't even blink. This is more important. I looked at my dad. He was staring at his plate. That night, I wore the silver dress she had picked out and smiled at the Los Angeles media people I didn't know and didn't want to know. When Victoria raised her glass to family unity, something in me froze forever. When we got home and everyone fell asleep, I snuck into the attic. The chest was there. It was my mother's. It was closed with a lock with the initials MG. I used to be afraid to open it. But now, I needed my mom. Her memory. Her strength. 20 minutes later, I broke the lock. Inside was an envelope. A key. And a note in her handwriting. If you're reading this, Leah, then something has gone wrong. Trust yourself. Go to Cascade National. Use the code. Protect what's important. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I ran away from school, took a bus downtown, and walked into the marble lobby of Cascade National Bank. My heart was pounding like a metronome. In the private vault, I entered the code. The screen flickered and opened. Folders. Dozens of them. Names. Dates. Amounts. One is labeled Victoria, March 4th, 19, Miami. Another, RG, withdrawal from the fund. And then toxicology, MG. My mom knew. She suspected something. She investigated. Medical records, private detectives' reports, screenshots of correspondence between Dad and Victoria, plans to restructure the fund, hotel reservations, transfers to offshore accounts. And at the end there is a backup disk. It has a yellow sticker on it. Activate only if necessary. Password, Wildfern. I closed the safe. My palms were shaking. I walked home slowly through a fog of noise and light. Only one thing was burning in me. They thought I was a child. That I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't fight. They were wrong. That night I became someone else. Someone who never forgets. I sat in my room, surrounded by silence in which all the words I had read in the bank vault rang out. The walls seemed to breathe someone else's air. It seemed to me that the world had bent, distorted, and I was the only one left standing upright in the middle of it. The first thing I did was to make a digital copy of everything. I didn't trust hard drives. Not after watching Victoria ruthlessly throw away my mother's things. I encrypted the archive, uploaded it to the cloud, and made a copy on a small USB with my mom's pendant. It became my new talisman. I reread my mother's reports at night, her language precise and logical as always. She didn't just suspect poisoning, she was building a case. She collected tests, conducted experiments, even consulted doctors from the Netherlands. Someone was changing her medication. Slowly, methodically, someone who had access. A check for a hotel in Miami, dated a month before my mother's hospitalization, was signed with the initials RG and paid from the corporate account of the Environmental Fund. This account was supposed to finance an expedition to Alaska. I started keeping a chronicle. Not an emotional diary, but a register. An event. A date. A document. Transfer of funds. Name. All in a table. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was not powerless. Every morning I played a role. Yes, Victoria, I cleaned up. No, Dad, everything is fine. They believed me. Maybe they wanted to believe. And meanwhile, I was sitting in Harvard's online law and finance courses, listening to lecturers who spoke the language of power. I took notes on everything: how to create trusts, what fiduciary responsibility is, how corporate manipulation works. At the same time, I joined a teenage hacker training program. San Francisco, Discord servers, pseudonyms, VPNs. I learned quickly, because time was not on my side. One day, when Victoria was filming another talk show, I received a letter. The postmark was New York. There was a business card in the envelope. Iva Nolan, lawyer, specializing in trusts and digital heritage. On the back is an inscription: Martha said you would find me when the time came. I realized that my mom knew that one day I would grow up to do this. I wrote to Ivy the same day. Everything was short, without unnecessary emotions. She replied in an hour. I've been waiting for your letter. We have a lot of work to do. And you have allies. It was the first time I felt that I was not alone. And since then, I've never doubted it. Next stop, Sam, the auditor. And after him, Judge Nelson. But first, I had to prove to myself that I could do more than just find the truth. I had to be the one to use it. And I was ready. I was no longer visible. Not in Victoria's eyes, not in my father's eyes, not in the society that saw me only as a businessman's daughter and a TV star's stepdaughter. But I learned how to be invisible. To be the silence that no one hears until it becomes an explosion. I improved my game every day. At home, I was obedient. Always collected, always polite. Victoria even started praising me in interviews. Leah is our pride. She is strong, like her mom. I swallowed these words like poison. My mother was terribly offended by the way her name now sounded from the lips of someone who may have helped destroy her. But the more I was considered innocent, the more I saw. I listened to Victoria on the phone with the producers. How my father talked about optimizing the fund to his business partners. Everything was recorded, on my old voice recorder, on the camera and my keychain, and notes that I coded with numbers. I've organized legal representation. She guided me through the process of gaining access to a portion of my mother's inheritance that was hidden in a separate trust. We created a new structure. I officially became a young consultant for the charity. This gave me an excuse to visit the offices and review financial documents. Everything was official. Everything within my authority. Sam, the auditor, was as dry as a school textbook, but his mind was razor sharp. In 3 weeks, we tracked down 4 large schemes of withdrawal of funds, through marketing contracts, fictitious consultations, and stock transactions with shell companies. I drew up a map, right on the wall in the room, under the guise of an environmental project for Stanford. A map of money flows connected by red threads. Everything on it made sense: who, when, how. And most importantly, why? Because the answer was not only money. There was also pride. And power. The desire to destroy everything that reminded her of Martha Gray. Victoria wasn't just wiping her mother's clothes, she was building her own kingdom on the ashes of someone else's inheritance. I recorded everything. Every movement. And every night before going to bed, I looked at my mom's photo. There was a note next to it. Do you remember who you are? Yes. I do. And soon they will remember too. I realized that I couldn't go any further on my own. The first was Sam. We met in a coffee shop near his firm's office, a place where the steam from the espresso machine mingled with the buzz of the meeting. He was sitting with the tablet, his analytical gaze perfectly matched by his emotionless tone. "You're conducting this like a true forensic accountant," he said, flipping through my spreadsheet. "Do you realize you could be found to be a fiduciary? You are now in the zone where the real trial begins before the lawsuit." "Okay," I said, "I know what I'm doing." After coffee, we went to his office. He showed me how to collect even deeper metadata from bank transactions, how to identify signals that are hidden in monthly reports. By the end of the meeting, I felt like more than just a kid with a diary. I was an analyst. I was no longer taught. I was considered a partner. Then there was Iva. We met in her office, which looked more like a literary agent's office than a lawyer's. Books, photos, a pot of fresh jasmine. But her eyes were like a prosecutor's. She did not miss a single detail, not a single word. When I laid out the documents in front of her, she was silent for a long time. "Marta prepared you for this, didn't she?" I nodded. She looked at me long and hard and then said, "Then we begin." She drew up a list of steps, formalizing my credentials, legally recognizing my position at the foundation, filing with the SEC, creating a digital archive that would be impossible to destroy, and most importantly, the judge's contacts. Judge Nelson was the last one. He was as old as the Constitution and as straightforward as ever. We met in his private office where Iva brought me. He sat, comfortable in his silence, looking at me like a chessboard. "Your mother trusted me," he said, "and now I have to trust you. Show me that I was right." I told him everything. Calmly. In detail. Not like a daughter crying for her mother, but like a strategist. He listened. He did not interrupt. "Do you want to restore justice or destroy them?" I took a breath. "Both." He smiled at the corner of his mouth. "Then keep a cool head. Emotions are a weakness in a courtroom battle. But logic is your weapon." That night I realized for the first time that I had an army. A small one. But accurate. And each of them had a motive, the memory of Martha Gray. And now we were launching an offensive. If the world they were playing in was built on data, I was going to be the one who understood it better than anyone else. I wasn't going to be just a smart girl who reads financial reports. I had to be the one who could penetrate walls. Literally. Thanks to an online hacking course from San Francisco, I entered another life: pseudonyms, the darknet, digital keys, encryption protocols. My face disappeared from social media. My IP address became ghostly. I disappeared from the radar, but at the same time I could see everything. I learned how to hack mailboxes, to write bots that exhaust metadata, analyze open APIs of banks. My room turned into a headquarters. 3 screens, spare hard drives, a password generator, a program for collecting digital signatures, and even a home server I built myself. Everything had a purpose, to see what was behind the facade. And with each step, I saw more. With Sam's help, I got a pattern of transactions that were previously blocked. He called it network dirt, those invisible financial paths that lead to the truth. With my own skills, I made my way to the accounts of offshore companies where the funds that were supposed to go to environmental projects were kept. There were PR campaigns that had never been carried out, consultations that no one had ordered, funds registered to a rented mailbox in Miami. But I wanted more than just money. I wanted to understand fear. And here was her personal laptop. I seized the moment when she left it in the studio during the live broadcast. I had access through the cloud. Everything was synchronized automatically. I knew where to look, the private folder. It was protected, but I knew her habits. Her passwords were combinations of dates and letters related to her dog. The folder opened in 3 minutes. Inside, a diary, PDF documents, screenshots of correspondence with her dad, security agency reports. One file was simply titled, MG True Cause? She knew. Not everything, but something. And she tried to find out more. Among the voice memos was a recording of her talking about inheritance risks and inability to control Leah. Her voice was trembling. She was panicking. And the more I listened, the more I realized that she was not afraid of the truth. She's afraid of me. I put all the evidence in a separate digital safe, legally protected, embedded in an open blockchain with instructions in case of my absence. Everything was to go to the press, the SEC, the FBI, journalists, all at the same time. The plan was simple and flawless. When I pressed save, I didn't feel fear, only calm. Now I was watching her, every move she made. And she knew it. Her empire was cracking. I could hear it in every block of code, in every transactional footprint. And I was right there with her. San Francisco smelled like eucalyptus and coffee. I stepped off the plane with a backpack that Victoria would not have approved of and a plan that would have scared her. In Stanford, everything was different, spacious, green, loud, but calm. No one asked me whose daughter I was. You could just be here. I moved in on campus, in a room with a view of pine trees and concrete. My roommate was a quiet biochemist who was always growing something on the windowsill. She didn't bother me, and I appreciated it. I spent most of my free time not in the library like the others, but in a small office I rented nearby, where I had my server, a network card, and a chair to fall into when my brain overheated. When Victoria found out that I had moved, she arranged an interview. She told the journalists how proud she was of me, how close we are, how she wants to adopt me. She looked sincere, so sincere that I could hardly believe it. I smiled back because it was profitable. This adoption became her trump card. And for me it was the key. Now I could see everything. The bills, payments, even the little things that used to be hidden behind my dad's signatures. Those signatures became less frequent, changed. Sometimes they were forged. I wasn't playing a detective. I was just taking notes. I took pictures. I was writing. And I was building a picture. Everything was coming together in it. And Victoria was in the center. I sent her a postcard, no signature, no address. Just a line. I see you. And this is new optics. The silence was louder than a scream. I knew she had read it. And that was enough to make her panic. It all started with a phone call. She didn't call, she invited me to a meeting. Through her assistant in an official tone, in the style of "let's discuss the future." I accepted. I even wondered what tone of voice Victoria would use this time. We met at a coffee shop in the center. I came early, sat down so that I could see her from the street. She came in a car with a driver, got out as usual, confident in a champagne-colored coat, with glasses that screamed, "I'm still in the picture." "Leah," she said, sitting down. I nodded. I took a sip of coffee. I didn't say anything. "I think it's time to formalize our relationship. Your dad would have wanted it too. You know we're family." "Family?" I asked again. "Who are you talking about now?" She stumbled over her words a little. I could tell. For the first time she paused. And I realized that she was nervous. And she had come for a reason. "Your father and I want you to feel safe. We want your name to be written everywhere it should be. And that your future decisions are legally supported. It's a logical step." "Yeah. And convenient for PR," I said. "And for access to the fund. And to justify the offshore accounts I already have access to." She fell silent. Her glass of mineral water was empty, but she held it up like a shield. "I know you're planning something," she whispered. "But you know I just wanted us to be together. So that everything wouldn't fall apart." "Then you shouldn't have started building on a lie," I replied. "Now just watch. And learn." I stood up. She didn't say goodbye. She remained sitting. And in her eyes, for the first time, there was neither control nor superiority. Only confusion. On the way out of the coffee shop, I saw her looking at me through the glass. I nodded. And I smiled, not with joy, but with a clear superiority. It was my game now. And it was just beginning. It all started with a phone call. She didn't call, she invited me to a meeting. Through her assistant in an official tone, in the style of "let's discuss the future." I accepted. I even wondered what tone of voice Victoria would use this time. We met at a coffee shop in the center. I came early, sat down so that I could see her from the street. She came in a car with a driver, got out as usual, confident in a champagne-colored coat, with glasses that screamed, "I'm still in the picture." "Leah," she said, sitting down. I nodded. I took a sip of coffee. I didn't say anything. "I think it's time to formalize our relationship. Your dad would have wanted it too. You know we're family." "Family?" I asked again. "Who are you talking about now?" She stumbled over her words a little. I could tell. For the first time she paused. And I realized that she was nervous. And she had come for a reason. "Your father and I want you to feel safe. We want your name to be written everywhere it should be. And that your future decisions are legally supported. It's a logical step." "Yeah. And convenient for PR," I said. "And for access to the fund. And to justify the offshore accounts I already have access to." She fell silent. Her glass of mineral water was empty, but she held it up like a shield. I know you're planning something, she whispered. But you know I just wanted us to be together. So that everything wouldn't fall apart. Then you shouldn't have started building on a lie, I replied. Now just watch. And learn. I stood up. She didn't say goodbye. She remained sitting. And in her eyes for the first time, there was neither control nor superiority. Only confusion. On the way out of the coffee shop, I saw her looking at me through the glass. I nodded. And I smiled not with joy but with a clear superiority. It was my game now. And it was just beginning. Victoria's plan was simple, a high-profile event, camera lights, glasses in the air. She rented a villa in Malibu, invited the media, old friends, people who never knew that behind her smile was fear. For Thanksgiving she wanted to announce a new beginning, a family with Leah and me. She even sent an invitation that smelled like lavender. I smiled when I opened it. That day the sky was bizarrely clear. The air was crisp and fresh. I arrived alone in a simple black dress without jewelry. My hair was in a low knot. I was holding a box. It was a gift. But not the one Victoria was expecting. Leah, she exclaimed as soon as she saw me. Her voice sounded a little strained, higher than usual. She came closer and hugged me in front of everyone. I'm so glad you're here. It means a lot. Of course, I replied calmly. My box remained in my hands. It was heavy but not physically. It weighed down with everything I had collected, everything I had experienced, everything that was no longer hidden. The villa was decorated luxuriously, white draperies, flowers in golden vases, a live quartet. The waiters carried champagne. People were laughing and taking pictures. Victoria looked like she was in the center of it all, like a queen of her own scenario. She walked me between the guests, introduced me to politicians and media people. I smiled, nodded, and answered politely. Everyone looked at us as a perfect duo. A girl with a difficult past and her brilliant new mom. While she was telling her stories, how we went for coffee together, how I spoke at a charity event for the first time, how we cried together, remembering Marta, I was breathing in deeply and counting the minutes. Because I knew it would all end here. As the sun began to sink and the evening turned golden, Victoria took the microphone. Everyone gathered around the pool. Her dress shone like tinfoil. Friends, she began, this year has been incredible for me. I lost a lot, but I gained even more. And today is a special day. Because I want to make it official, I am adopting Leah. She is my daughter. And this is the best thing that has happened in my life. Applause. Cameras were clicking. People hugging each other. Tears. Everything was just like in the movies. I went forward. I smiled. And held out the box. I have a gift for you too, I said. My voice was calm. Clear. She took the box. She opened it. And at first everything was usual. A smile, a demonstrative gesture. But then she saw the first document. Her smile faded. Her eyebrows twitched. She took out the second, third, fourth sheet. What is this? Her voice was hoarse. A dossier, I answered. All the questions you didn't want anyone to ask. She flipped through the pages. Copies of bills. Letters. Audio recordings. Photos from the hotel in Miami. Withdrawals. Changes in contracts. Fake signatures. Silence fell suddenly. People stopped laughing. Someone leaned closer. Someone was filming with a phone. If we agree, everything stays between us. If not, tomorrow the SEC, prosecutors, journalists, and all your advertisers will have this material. I pulled out a small flash drive. She stood pale. Her lips barely moved. Her eyes were scanning the pages. Everything was falling apart. I turned and left. Past the guests, past the glasses, past the gloss and the lies. Behind me was the end of her legend. And ahead of me was the last act of my truth. The first news came 18 hours later. One of the party guests managed to post a video on Instagram that very night, a short clip of me holding out the box and Victoria turning pale as she looked through the papers. The comments began to pour in. What was that? Life scandal, adoption with a surprise. I was sitting in my office in Palo Alto wearing an old sweatshirt, with a mug of cold coffee watching everything go to hell. And I did nothing. I didn't respond. Did not refute. Silence is also a weapon. In the morning, most of the media already had some of the materials. Some received them from an anonymous source. Some got it directly through an automated mailing list I had programmed a week ago. Everyone knew it was the end of her empire. The phones were blowing up. Quince wrote, "Game on." Sam sent screenshots of sponsoring companies announcing a pause in cooperation. Even Judge Nelson called personally just to say, "I'm proud of what you've become." And Victoria? She was silent. But she couldn't stay silent for long. 2 days later, she appeared on the morning show. She was crying, her voice breaking. "It's a conspiracy. Leah is a girl with a complicated past. I just wanted to help." She talked about my trauma of loss and manipulation by lawyers. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall and laughed. Loudly. For the first time in a long time. Because now everything was out of her hands. I was invited to appear on the air. I refused. I didn't need popularity. I needed justice. And she finally started working for me. A week after the party, my dad got in touch. Message. A short one. "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if I believed him one bit. But eventually I answered. In the presence of a lawyer. And without Victoria. We met in Nelson's office. He sat down across from me, older than I remembered. His eyes were tired. For the first time without that armor of self-confidence. "I didn't see. I didn't want to see," he said. "But now I see. And I'm ready to do whatever it takes." I put a contract in front of him. An agreement. He leaves all authority to the foundation. He publicly recognizes my rights. He returns the funds withdrawn through joint accounts with Victoria. And he resigns. He signed immediately. "Did she know?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "And so did you." I just didn't want to believe it. When he left, I was left with Nelson. "You're officially in charge of the foundation now," he said. "But it's not just about power, Leah. It's about memory. About what your mom wanted." "I know," I replied. "And I won't forget." And that evening, Victoria was arrested. In Florida. She was trying to withdraw funds from the offshore account she still had. She was returned to California under house arrest, with the condition of full cooperation. She could no longer remain silent. And this time her voice sounded completely different. Collapse is not when something explodes. It is when a thing falls but does not rise again. And she was falling. After Victoria's arrest, everything changed. For the first time in a long time, the house was quiet. No interviews, no scandals, no constant camera surveillance. She no longer appeared in the media or on social media. She did not comment. She did not make any excuses. The court banned any public statements while the investigation was ongoing. I officially took up the position of executive director of the foundation. I spent most of my time in the office, reviewing old contracts, checking transactions, communicating with lawyers and auditors. It was a lot of work, but it gave me a sense of control. Victoria remained under house arrest in her apartment in Beverly Hills. Her phone was disconnected. Her email was empty. She had disappeared. But I knew she was being watched. Through her lawyers, through the remnants of her connections. She couldn't accept that she had lost. Ronald filed for divorce. He signed all the documents. The marriage contract had a clause about infidelity and financial fraud. This left her with no property, no assets, no support. All she had was the apartment she had bought before the marriage, and a limited amount for personal expenses under the control of the court. My lawyers focused on recovering the money from offshore accounts. Some banks cooperated, others did not. It was a war of documents, letters, and calls. But we were making progress. The money withdrawn from the fund was coming back. Slowly, step by step. I received a letter. It was handwritten. No return address. There was one photo in the envelope. My mom is in the mountains. She is smiling. On the back is an inscription. "You won. But I'm still breathing." I had no doubt who it was from. I handed the envelope to the lawyers. Victoria could not threaten me directly. But her words remained. They didn't scare me, they just reminded me that the story was not over yet. I organized a press conference. I spoke briefly. I told the truth. No drama, no pathos. My mother created a foundation to protect nature. And I will do my best to make it serve its purpose. After the conference, journalists, activists, and my mother's former colleagues came up to me. They thanked me. I just nodded. It was not a victory. It was a beginning. Expulsion is not just about who is expelled. It's about who gets their place back. I got it back. It seemed to me that everything was over. But one question remained open: my mother's death. What was then recognized as a natural complication never seemed true to me. Her suspicions of poisoning were documented, but not proven. Sam handed me a report. One of the laboratories with which the Foundation cooperated stored biomaterials frozen tissue samples that Marta herself had submitted during her last tests. These were official samples for the clinical trial archive. And they were still available. I gave permission to retest them. Everything is official. Through an independent toxicology laboratory. 2 weeks later, the results came back. Traces of cadmium and mercury were found in the tissues in quantities that could not be accidental. Cadmium was especially dangerous. It accumulates slowly. It mimics the symptoms of autoimmune disorders. This is what my mother was diagnosed with before she died. I looked at the results and felt nothing. No shock. No anger. Only confirmation. It was not only Victoria's fault. My father came by himself. Without warning. For the first time in a long time, without a lawyer, without demands. He just sat down across from me in the Foundation's office. "Did you know I didn't do anything?" he asked. "But you didn't stop me either," I answered. He nodded. Quiet. He was silent for a long time. She said that Marta exaggerated everything. That she was making things up. And I was tired. I believed her because it was easier. Because she spoke confidently and Marta was silently sick. And I didn't want to see. And now? I asked. Now I want the truth to be heard. Even if it destroys me. I handed him a copy of the report. He looked at it for a long time. Then he wrote a letter, a short text signed by his hand. An admission that he had ignored the warning, that he had not checked the source of the medicines that were coming to my mother's room. The letter was to become part of the case if it went to court. I didn't know if it was enough. But it was a step. And this time it was a conscious one. My mom did not die of an illness. She died because no one stopped the evil in time. And now it was officially confirmed. In the evening I went to the mountains. To the place where she loved to go. I brought a printout of the results, her favorite scarf, and a photo of her smiling. I did not cry. I said out loud, I proved it. I've done it. And it's your name that's now clean again. The wind tore the paper from my hands. And I didn't stop it. Because my mom already knew. After everything that happened, I didn't want to go back to the old building. It smelled like someone else's decisions signed behind my back. I rented a new place in the center of San Francisco, bright, spacious, overlooking the bay. Everything started from scratch there. The new office was not just walls. It was a gesture. A position. A signal. We were not patching up the past. We were creating the future. The first employees were those who had worked with my mother before Victoria. Quince helped bring back some old partners. 2 environmentalists from Seattle arrived right after my letter. One had volunteered on Mom's expeditions. The other was working with her on a study of the impact of chemical emissions on the soil. I held the first meeting. No speeches. No showmanship. I just laid out a plan on the table. We are restoring the research area. We are returning to real field conditions. And we are open to inspections, partnerships, open databases. Everything is public. Everything is transparent. I spoke simply, clearly, and people stayed. We created a new website and updated the visual style. In the center is a photo of my mother. No pathetics. She was holding a laptop against the backdrop of a forest. Her smile is calm and genuine. We started every day without slogans. Just by checking the facts, projects, and goals. We didn't save the world. We were just doing our job. Good, honest, quiet. I learned to delegate. I stopped controlling everything. But I always knew what was going on. I had no desire to be a star. But there was a desire for this office to be a place where the truth does not disappear. Sometimes I received letters. Letters of gratitude. Support. Offers. But I remember one. Martha would be proud. Thank you for not breaking down. The sender was anonymous. I kept it in a drawer. Not as a trophy. But as a reminder of why I'm here. Because this office is not about me. It's still her case. It's just in my hands now. It was quiet. Too quiet. I was almost used to the peace. But it didn't last long. The message came to the Foundation's mail. An unofficial address. The attached file was a photo. Me and my mom. Taken from behind through the bushes. It was probably taken on the day when we were together at the opening of the Eco Park. The email contained nothing but coordinates. I looked at the screen for a long time. wanted to hand everything over to the police right away. But I knew it wasn't a threat. It was a challenge. The location was an old maintenance warehouse near Redwood City, a place my mom and I used to visit when she was working on a biological restoration project. No one had been there for years. I went by myself. There was no trap. Just a box. A box with a diary in it. My mom's handwriting. Entries I'd never seen before. The years she was sick. Her suspicions, her observations. But the main thing is the mention of a man named Grayson. She wrote that it was he who helped her understand how cadmium was getting into her system. A former chemist, now a reclusive analyst. And also, if something happens, look for him. He knows more than I could ever know. I contacted Samuel. A few days later, we found him, living under an assumed name in Nevada. He agreed to meet with me only on the condition of complete anonymity. We met in an abandoned laboratory. He was older, exhausted, but precise. And he said simply, Martha had discovered the correct circuit, but she didn't know it was connected to public procurement. The substances were tested not only in laboratories. They were tested through hospitals. Some substances could get to ordinary patients. My mom was a target, he added, because she detected too much. I left the lab a different person. Now it was no longer just a story about a family. It was a systemic issue. I returned to San Francisco. I called a meeting the same day. And I said something I hadn't said before. We are not just a foundation. We are an investigation initiative. And we are moving on. Returning is not about remembering. It is about acting. To the end. I knew it would be difficult. But I did not expect how strongly the system defends itself when someone touches its darkest corners. We started with the archives. Public databases, procurement registers, reports that no one had read in years. Sam and his team found suspicious matches. The same suppliers, the same drugs, the same names and tenders, and the same symptoms in hundreds of patients across the country. Iva was preparing a legal position. We could not file charges directly. There was no complete evidence base yet. But we could launch a request to the Senate. A petition. A public campaign. And we did it. I recorded a video message. No editing. No music. It was just me, the fundraising office, and the truth. I said everything I knew. I mentioned numbers, facts, company names. I spoke not as an activist, but as a daughter who lost her mother because of an experiment. The video went viral. 3 million views in a day. Interviews, invitations, support from doctors, scientists, even former patients who recognized their own symptoms. And then a witness. A former technician at one of the laboratories wrote to me anonymously. We met in a cafe. He gave me copies of reports that had disappeared from the databases. There was everything there, batches of substances, dates of admission to hospitals, a list of participants in clinical trials. Among them was my mother's name. I didn't cry. I just memorized it. A week later, a senator from California initiated a hearing. I was called as a witness. And I came. In a dark suit. Without a lawyer. With documents in my hands. Tell me why you are here, asked the chairman of the committee. I am here on behalf of my mother. And on behalf of those who were poisoned while they thought they were being treated, I answered. That was just the beginning. But after that day, we were no longer just a foundation. We were a voice. And testimony is not the end. It is a platform. A year has passed. It's raining in San Francisco. I'm standing in the foundation's office by the big window holding a postcard. There is a familiar photo on it. My mother is smiling in the wilderness against the backdrop of tall pine trees. Behind it is an inscription. Do you remember? It has become a tradition. Once a year, I send a postcard like this to Victoria. She is no longer under house arrest, but she remains under surveillance. She has lost everything. She lives modestly. Her name is no longer in the media. She does not answer. But I know she is receiving. The foundation is working. New projects are launched every day. New research. We opened a laboratory to control the effects of toxic substances. We are currently preparing a program for schools. I don't manage everything, we have a team. But every decision goes through me. Sometimes people ask me why I'm still doing this. Why I didn't go into politics, sell everything and disappear. The answer is simple, because memory is a responsibility. This Thanksgiving I stayed in the city. No cameras. No dinners. Just me, my office, and silence. I opened my laptop and looked at my mom's photo. I read her letter again, which I already know by heart. It ended with the words, "You are not just my daughter. You are my voice when I am gone. Now I know it's true. Because every Thanksgiving I remember. Not the anger. Not the pain. But the point where it all started. And it's not about revenge anymore. It's about the justice that breathes every day. And about a girl who once opened her mother's chest. And she was not afraid.